Hello everyone, and we hope you're all doing very well. So I recently did a video on my grandfather, Basil Joseph Tyrrell, and his exploits in World War II and his later work designing the steam turbines for naval vessels in the early 50s. Well, we're continuing directly on from that, and we're now looking at another grandfather, Donald McGee Luckett. This has nothing to do with me. This is to do with a chap named Serb, S-E-R-B. He does not fly DCS with us. He does do armor with us, the ground ops missions that we do. And so we're covering his granddad today. Now, we couldn't get Serb on. I think he's a little bit camera shy, so we're just going to do it for him, basically, which is fine. Not everyone wants to be on camera. I got myself, I got Daiichi, and I got Onslaught. Say hello, boys.
Ni hao.
Hello.
Let's get stuck in with Grandad Luckett. So these words we've got here are Serb's words, and we'll read them out and we'll go through the pictures. So I don't really know where to start, but this was my grandfather. So things to take home for here. He was born in 1933 and he died in 2005. Let's look at some memorabilia, and then we're going to work our way. He was in the Navy, the US Navy, and we'll work our way to looking at the ships that he served on. This was his dog tag. I wondered for a bit what it all meant, but it's pretty easy now that I know. So he's got his first name, Donald H. We've got his middle name, his first name, his last name, and his middle initial, and service number. We've got his blood type, A, branch of the military, US Navy, and C for Christian. Okay. This was his Korean War medal. Sadly, the fabric rotted away, so I should say that he was in the Navy post World War II. I'm not sure how long when he finished in the Navy, but it's just post World War II coming up to Korea. This was his Korean War medal. Sadly, the fabric rotted away, but the medal is in good shape. The back, I don't know who inscribed his date of death. I think it was my uncle who served in the Navy in the 90s. So, I see, it's quite a cool medal. It's got Korea on there. Is that the whole of Korea or South Korea? That'd be interesting to know. I'm guessing the whole of Korea.
That's the whole peninsula.
That's the whole peninsula, and a couple of rounds of 7.62 or whatever. And it's written on Korean, presumably, in the back. Interesting. Okay. I still even have his 1950s service coin for the Navy. This was some more of his coins that he collected in his various deployments. So which ones do you know here, Daiichi?
I know the bottom left and the bottom right. That is a 500 yen piece from Japan.
Oh, right. So he was in Japan at some point. And you know their Onslaught?
Not particularly.
So so the top left one is a service coin, right?
Yeah, it looks like the top two is the one to the right is the front, and the one to the left is the back.
Yeah, I just read Canada, $2 on the top right, and don't know these ones here. If anyone else can know that would be cool, but I don't recognise them.
It's probably the Filipino coins.
Yeah, good point. When I was looking at my grandfather, I had bags and bags of weird coins we couldn't identify, but I didn't want to put it in the video because it would have lasted forever. But it's interesting. It shows where they've been. Okay, guys. And now we're going down and left. Well, at least on my screen I am. And apologies for the spelling here. Peso is the Filipino term for peso, which is the Philippine currency. Okay, so it's in the Philippines as well. Some more currency is saved. Okay, so we've got some cool currency there. This is his service lighter. Like I said, he served on board the USS Yorktown. The Yorktown served during World War II, and afterwards it was decommissioned. So we need to understand. I think he may have miswritten that a bit. There was actually two USS Yorktowns. There was USS Yorktown 1, which was CV5, guys. CV5 served in World War II and was sunk in World War II on the Battle of Midway. And we're going to have a look at these ships in a minute, just for fun. Now, our man here, Luckett, didn't serve on, I think there's a bit of confusion, didn't serve on USS Yorktown's 1 CV5. And we can tell that because we can look at his date of birth, 1933. And USS Yorktown 1 CV5 was sunk, Battle of Midway, 1942 it was sunk. So he was only 10 years old when the Yorktown was actually sunk. The following year after the Yorktown was sunk, the second Yorktown was commissioned, 1943, that's CV-10. So that's the one that obviously Grandad Luckett sailed on. He never sailed on the previous one. And this was several years active in the Eastern Theatre. So this was his service lighter, you can see there, USS Yorktown, CV-10, look, you can see it says there. Cool. Awesome. Next jump up, let me just think. We're jumping right next, at least on my screen. When the Korean War broke out, it was recommissioned CV-A-10. and served in Task Force 77. So we can see here some pictures from the time. These are pictures, pictures from our guy. But on the CVA-10, we've got Grumman F-9F Panthers and Douglas A-2 Sky Raiders in the photos there. Maybe we'll have a look at them in a bit. So these are early 50s carrier-borne jets. There's our guy there, I think. Going down the left, this was my granddad in various places. He was stationed at Guam, Hawaii, Japan, Philippines. So all these places where we've got our coins from. And the Yorktown's home base in California. I'm not sure when he joined and when he left. Yeah, so that's some information that we're missing. Same with my granddad. It's just we need a bit more info. It's hard to get this information. So this was Guam. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. Fun fact was that I was actually stationed in Japan itself, so I can relate quite a bit to him.
Roger, when were you stationed in Japan?
2003 to 2007.
Okay, this is Guam here, and that's what looks like just a couple of service ships there. Up and right, that's our guy here. More pics with his Navy buddies. More pics. I think that's possibly on the edge of CVA-10. This is presumably on CVA-10. That is in one of the Far Eastern towns. In terms of his MOS, basically his job description, as far as I've been told, he was a coal shoveler in the boiler room of the Yorktown. So engine-wise, in CVA-10, we're looking at coal burners and boilers creating steam, and we think for steam turbine propulsion. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's in this time with these carriers, I believe that's how they were powered. Which, as you can imagine, are tough working conditions deployed in the Pacific, which is hot and sweaty at the very bottom of the ship with limited airflow, sub-light working conditions, bulkheads and tight working areas, and busting ass, tell it American, in the boiler rooms where it was without doubt extremely noisy, even hotter because the engine heat and the boiler heat being produced. But it makes me proud of him, and a lot of my family busted their asses to protect American interest, and the stories are the stories of many others who not only served but lost their lives. I had a great grandfather who was in Pearl Harbor, so the next generation up or before was in Pearl Harbor. It would be interesting to find out some more if we've got about him. I don't know if anyone's got any data on him. So many people we can investigate, piece together their stories. I have this grandfather, this one here we're talking about, who died of lung cancer, and my other grandfather on the other side also served in the Navy. So this is a full paternal and maternal history of the Navy. My uncle served in the Navy in the 90s as a corpsman, and then in the Coast Guard. He eventually committed suicide from PTSD, which is a big thing, and something I'm actually going to look into a bit more, but that's for another day. A great uncle who served in Vietnam US Army as radio man. So it's the Vietnam Army, yep. And a cousin in the 90s in the US Marine Corps who's in the Gulf War, cousin who's in the ROTC becoming a US Marine Corps officer, and I myself plan to eventually join the USAF. That's how we found the Grim Reapers, and I'm currently working. Anyway, that's the story I know of my grandfather. He was a pretty stern man, who was a humble man and enjoyed woodworking and farming. I barely remember times with him, but I do a little, same with me. Okay, so that's good. And here we've got some generic pictures of CVA-10 here, or here at CV before the Korean War, CV-10. And there we go. And there we go. So that's a really interesting story, and thank you for Serb there. Now, before we go and look at the ships a little further, anything you guys want to mention about what we've heard here, about working in the boiler rooms, and anything of interest that you guys know?
I could relate it a little bit to when I went into the engine rooms for training for a few things. It is indeed pretty hot, even in the modern day. Even in modern day, like destroyers and such, it's a little more closely monitored nowadays. But yeah. I also think it was I was reading something about how they would move around these giant buckets of coal that had about 140 pounds worth in them. Wow. I don't know if that's older or if that's around this era, but yeah.
Let's pop out and just get some general information. First thing, we looked at the medal here. So we've got here a US, we're not sure if this is, how relevant this is, but this is something Daiichi found regarding the badge. Do you want to talk about that, Daiichi?
In the US Navy, we don't exactly have MOSs. We have what's known as a rate, which is the job that you perform, and then you have a rank, which that's your pay grade, or how some people would be infantryman, no, not infantryman, like a specialist in the, which would be like E2. Those would combine together to form a rating, and I tried to guess at what his rate would be, and I think it sounded like it was Boilerman.
Yeah.
So I was like, this would be like BT3.
I see. Yeah, the top right. I've got. I see different ratings. That is interesting. All right. Next, we'll talk about the ships because we like ships at the end of the day. So we're going to go to CV5 first. This is USS Yorktown 1. It was commissioned 1937. Before World War II, and it was sunk. You all know the story of the Battle of Midway, obviously, don't need to tell you, and you all know, I'm sure, that the Yorktown 1 CV5 was sunk in 1942. Yorktown played an important part in the battle, assisting in the destruction of multiple enemy aircraft carriers and absorbing the majority of the enemy counterattacks. She was named after the Battle of Yorktown in 1781, and the lead ship of the Yorktown class, which was designed after lessons learned from operations with the large converted battlecruiser Lexington class and the smallest purpose-built USS Ranger. She was sunk by Japanese submarine I-168 on 6th of June 1942 during the Battle of Midway. And if we look at her some basic characteristics, displacement, interestingly, fully loaded, only 25,000 tons. And to me, that's really light. That's, even at the time, World War II, that's only, that's only heavy cruiser weight. So I'm amazed how light these things are for the size of them. Do you want to roughly talk about why you think that is, Daiichi?
A lot of it is just focusing more on like trying to carry more aircraft. I would say it was probably about the biggest thing, and usually these things were thought of at the time as more of a support ship than one that would go directly at the enemy, so you don't really need the tonnage on your armor.
Absolutely. So it's armor. So size-wise, there is, you can see 800 feet here. It's as big as a battleship, basically. Beams 100 feet, draft is 25 feet. But there's no armor, and there's no big guns. It's the armor and the big guns that are going to weigh the extra 50,000 tons, that gets you up to Yamato class or something. So without the armor and guns, the ship's just as big, but it's a third of the weight. So it's just something really interesting that I found. I wasn't aware. I assumed all the CVs were incredibly heavy. And just otherwise, out of interest, we've got 9 times Babcock and Wilcox boilers and steam geared turbines. So now the interesting link here is that this links to my grandfather, who was designing literally these steam turbines for heavy naval use for big horsepower tonnage and high tonnage in World War II and beyond. So that's the link to mine there. And you can see, because presumably of the design, the weight and the horsepower, we've got 32.5 knots, which is good, for a big unit like that. That's interesting. Oh wow, compliment as well. 2.2 thousand men. I didn't know that. Okay, let's go and have a look now at CV10. So this is the one that Luckett was sailing on. CV, so it, depending on what it was doing, it was CV, then it was CVA during the Korean War, then it was CVS after that. It's one of the 24 Essex class aircraft carriers built during World War II for the US Navy. She was named after the Battle of Yorktown and the American Revolutionary War, and this is the 4th US Navy ship, didn't know that, to bear the name. Initially to have been named Bonhomme Richard, ? She was renamed Yorktown while still under construction to commemorate the loss of the USS Yorktown during the Battle of Midway. Do you know how many people survived out of those 2.2 thousand people, by the way? Yorktown was commissioned in 1943 and participated in several campaigns in the Pacific theatres of operation, earning 11 battle stars, wow, and the Presidential Unit Citation. Decommissioned shortly after the end of the war, she was modernised and recommissioned February 1953 as an attack carrier, CVA, and served with distinction during the Korean War. The ship was later modernised again with a canted deck, eventually becoming an anti-submarine carrier, which is CVS, and served for many years in the Pacific, including duty in the Vietnam War, during which she earned 5 battle stars. Later in her career, she served as a recovery ship for Apollo 8, which we will know about, a space mission, and was in these various movies here. She was decommissioned in 1970 and in 1975 became a museum piece and National Historic Landmark, which is awesome. Okay, we looked at some rough characteristics. Fully loaded, 36,000 tons, so you're still only half of a really big battleship. Even though she's huge, look, she is nearly 900 feet total, which is bigger than anything I can think of. Big draft, big beam, 8 boilers this time with a gross 150,000 shaft horsepower. Again, we've got geared steam turbines, same as my dad was working on. Grandad, speed 33 knots, which is impressive for the tonnage and the size. Wow, the range is massive, 14,000 nautical miles. It's like 20,000 kilometers. Complement of 2.6 thousand people. Armament is, obviously we don't have big guns, we have up to about 40 mil, but it's bristling with various guns. All going to be anti-aircraft, presumably. And that's it. One thing we haven't mentioned is aircraft carried on them. So CV5 would have been World War II fighters and bombers. So Corsairs. I mean, what kind of things do you think on CV5, guys?
Hellcats, Wildcats, Dauntless, Corsairs. Basically anything from the U.S. Navy, I guess.
Yeah, like Avenger torpedo bombers would also be an option. It's just whatever they could get on these things at the time.
Awesome. And CV10, so early 50s. What kind of planes? Anyone know the kind of planes that we would have had then? And that's a real black spot of my knowledge. Kind of planes that would be carrying.
Probably, but at that point it'd still be the same prop planes, and then when you start experimenting with jets, that's when they recommissioned and built in a longer flight deck, and then built in that offset flight deck later to help accommodate that.
All right, so I get it. So 19, right, yeah. So 45 to 52, we think probably. We don't really have the time to fully look into it or talk to you about it now, but not 45 to 52 commission. It sounds like still propeller planes, kind of World War II type planes. Then 53 to 55. Elongated deck and the jets. Yeah, interesting. And so on. And then it had a canted deck put in later. Very good stuff.
You were asking about the lives on board the CV5 when it sunk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on Wikipedia it did state that it sunk with 141 men were killed when it sunk.
Mm-hmm.
The complement, it had 2,200 men on board. So majority of the sailors actually managed to evacuate.
I understand that, but the reason I asked was because
I recall that
it wasn't
sunk really slowly.
But wasn't Yorktown? Oh, I'm going to hijacking this video now a bit, but I was watching Jaws, quite a while ago, and the guy I thought he was talking about Yorktown that he went down on, is where they all got eaten by sharks. And, it's a bit of an urban myth, and about only a couple of hundred survived. I thought it might be Yorktown, but I may be wrong. So only a few went down with the ship, 2,000 got out, but by the time they got to rescue, most of them had been eaten or drowned.
That could be Hollywood depicting what we call sea stories.
Roger. Yeah. Again, we're really time restricted at the moment, so we haven't got time to look, but any comments will be welcome.
Yeah, I do have 3 things to add for it.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is that you may be able to get a little more detail. If you go to, like, a veterans outreach area or like a veterans affairs office,
mm-hmm.
you could try asking for what's called a DD-214. When you go to leave the armed forces, any of them, you'll get that at the end. It'll give like a general idea of where you served, like medals earned, all that sort of stuff. The second is if you want to get the ribbon repaired on the Korean War medal, you can have that done to have the ribbon replaced on there. And then the third thing is that you might want to bring the story down to that museum ship. They might actually let you walk in that engineering space. You might be able to see where your father worked at.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, right. I'll talk to him. We'll get that done. And I was just showing the navysource.org website. Anything you want to say about that?
That one is just more of like a general description. Also, if you see that ribbon panel on there, that's sort of what I was referring to. A ship can earn a medal or accommodation as much as a sailor can, and she's done a lot.
Absolutely. I guess that's why it became a museum. But right, we're going to have to crack off. We're going to have to crack on with something else now. I hope that was enjoyable to you guys. We welcome your comments, and we'll keep doing Grandad stories because it's good. Thanks for watching. See you later.